My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 68 years old now, living in a cabin outside Bozeman, Montana. I haven't spoken about what happened in Vietnam for 52 years. Not to the VA psychiatrists. Not to my ex-wife. Not even to my daughters, who think their father just came back broken like so many others. But broken doesn't cover it. Broken is what happens when you see combat, when you watch your friends die, when you come home to a country that doesn't want you. What happened to me, to us, was something else entirely. I was a communications specialist with the 5th Special Forces Group, assigned to a classified reconnaissance unit operating out of Kon Tum Province in late 1972. Our call sign was Echo 7, 12 men, all of us handpicked. All of us were told we'd be operating in sectors that didn't officially exist, conducting missions that would never appear in any after-action report. We were ghosts before we ever disappeared. The Army says Echo 7 was lost to enemy action on November 9th, 1972, near the Cambodian border. They say we walked into an NVA ambush. They say only 3 of us survived, and that our memories were unreliable due to trauma and possible chemical exposure. They gave us medals, disability pensions, and very specific instructions about what we were allowed to remember. But here's what they don't want you to know, Echo. 7 didn't vanish in Cambodia. We went somewhere else. Somewhere that shouldn't exist on any map. And 9 members of my unit didn't die. They're still there. I know this because I can still hear them. Every night at 0347 hours, my old field radio turns itself on. It's been sitting in my basement for half a century. No batteries, no power source, sealed in a storage locker by the DoD before they let me keep it as a memento. But it broadcasts anyway. Static at first, then voices. Checkpoint Charlie. This is Echo 7. Actual, do you copy? We are still in position. Requesting immediate extraction. The voices are young, urgent, exactly as they sounded that last night. My voice is among them. I've tried to destroy that radio. Smashed it with a hammer, burned it, buried it in the woods behind my property. It always comes back. Always in the same spot in my basement. Always broadcasting at the same time. The DoD knows. They've been monitoring my home for decades. I see the same dark sedans parked on the logging road. I recognize the listening devices they plant when they think I'm asleep. They're waiting to see if I'll break my silence. Waiting to see if I'll tell someone what we found in those mountains. Well, I'm dying now. Pancreatic cancer. The doctors give me 3 months, maybe 4. So I'm going to tell this story while I still can, while my mind is still clear enough to remember the details they tried to erase. I'm going to tell you about the valley that doesn't exist, about the structure we found buried beneath 1,000 years of jungle, about what happened when we went inside. And I'm going to tell you why, after 52 years, Echo 7 is still out there, still transmitting, still waiting for extraction that will never come. If you're watching this, you need to understand something. This isn't a war story. War one could have lived with. War has rules even when those rules are broken. This was something older than war. Something that was waiting in those mountains long before humans ever learned to kill each other. We were just unlucky enough to find it. The Army classified everything about Echo 7 under a designation I'd never seen before or since. Wumbra VEI. Not top secret, not even special access, something else entirely. They made us sign documents that declared we'd never legally existed. Our service records were altered. Our families were told we'd died in classified operations. Those of us who survived were given new identities, new social security numbers, and were forbidden from ever contacting each other again. But you can't erase something like this. It stays with you, in your dreams, in the way you flinch when you hear certain frequencies on a radio, on the way you can't look at dense forest without wondering what's watching back. I'm recording this testimony for whoever finds it. Maybe it's someone at Warx Files. Maybe it's some kid with a YouTube channel or a journalist who still believes in digging for truth. Whoever you are, you need to know that what I'm about to tell you is real. Every word, every impossible detail. Echo 7 went into those mountains in November 1972. Only their voices ever came back. It started in late October 1972, 2 weeks before it all went to hell. We were called into a briefing at Camp Holloway, but not the usual briefing room. They took us underground, into a bunker complex I didn't even know existed. The room had no windows, triple locked doors, and a signal jammer mounted in the corner. Captain Richard Holloway himself was there, our commanding officer and the man this camp was named after, along with 2 civilians in pressed khaki who never introduced themselves. Intelligence, probably CIA, definitely not anyone who'd ever carried a rifle into combat. The mission brief was sparse. We were to proceed to grid reference, XD 847293, deep in the Central Highlands near the tri-border area where Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam converged. Our objective, investigate an anomalous radio transmission that had been detected by NSA listening posts 3 weeks prior. The signal was repeating on a frequency that shouldn't have been possible with 1972 technology, and it was coming from an area that supposedly had 0 American presence. "What kind of transmission?" asked Sergeant First Class Dale Morrison, our team lead. He was 34, already gray at the temples, a lifer who'd done 2 previous tours and never flinched at anything. One of the civilians clicked on a reel-to-reel player. The sound that filled the room made my skin crawl. It wasn't static exactly. It was layered voices beneath voices, speaking in what sounded like English but wrong, distorted, like someone had taken words and played them backwards and forwards simultaneously. Underneath it all was a rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat, but too slow, too deliberate. "We believe it's a Soviet listening post," the civilian said, though his eyes said he believed no such thing. "You're to locate it, assess it, and if possible, secure any intelligence materials. Rules of engagement are flexible. No prisoners, no radio contact unless absolutely necessary. Complete radio silence until you reach the objective." Morrison looked at me. I was the comms guy, the one who'd be responsible for keeping us connected to the world. Complete radio silence was unusual, but not unheard of. What bothered me was the way the civilians emphasized it. Not tactical silence, complete silence. Like they didn't want us talking to anyone, like they wanted us isolated. We flew out at dawn on November 2nd in a Huey with no markings. The pilot was some contract guy, Australian or South African by his accent, who didn't say a word the entire flight. We skimmed the treetops heading west, the jungle an endless green carpet below us. After an hour, we crossed into territory that officially didn't exist. No American forces, no friendly villages, just mountains and jungles so thick it looked black from above. The pilot set us down in a clearing that was barely wide enough for the rotors. "This is as close as I get," he said. "You've got a 10-click hike due west. Follow the river valley. You'll know the spot when you see it." "What spot?" Morrison asked. The pilot looked at him with an expression I couldn't quite read. Pity, maybe, or fear. "You'll know," he repeated. Then he was gone, and we were alone in the jungle with enough supplies for a week, weapons that had been specially modified to suppress sound, and a set of coordinates that led to nowhere on any official map. The first 2 days were routine. We moved through triple canopy jungle, following a narrow river that cut through the limestone karst like a vein. The terrain was brutal steep ridges, hidden caves, sections where the jungle was so dense we had to hack our way through with machetes. But we were used to that. What we weren't used to was the silence. There were no birds, no insects, no monkeys howling in the trees. Just the sound of our boots on mud, our breathing, and the endless whisper of the river. Morrison ordered us to stay alert, but for what? There were no signs of NVA, no trails, no recent campfires. It was like we'd walked into a dead zone. On the 3rd day, we found the first marker. It was a stone pillar, maybe 8 feet tall, covered in script that none of us recognized. Not Vietnamese, not Khmer, not any Asian language I'd ever seen. The characters looked old, weathered by centuries, but they'd been carved deep enough that they were still clearly visible. Around the base of the pillar were the remains of offerings, pottery shards, animal bones, and something that looked like a crude doll made from human hair. "Local superstition," said Corporal Jimmy Vasquez, our medic, but his voice wavered. "Montagnard tribes, probably. Warning marker." "Warning about what?" asked Private First Class David Chen, the youngest member of our team at 19. Nobody answered him. We reached grid reference XD 847293 on the afternoon of November 7th. According to our maps, it should have been just another patch of jungle. Instead, we found ruins. Stone structures emerging from the earth like broken teeth, half swallowed by roots and vines. They were arranged in a circular pattern around a central plaza, and in the center of that plaza was a well. Not a natural sinkhole. A well, with dressed stones and evidence of engineering far beyond what any local tribe should have possessed. Morrison called a halt. We set up a perimeter while he and I approached the well. It was maybe 10 feet across, perfectly circular, descending into absolute darkness. I dropped a stone down it and counted. 8 seconds before I heard it hit water. That put the bottom at least 300 feet down, far too deep for a water source in this terrain. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. It was the sound that came up from the well after the stone hit. A sound like wind, but shaped into something almost like a word, almost like a warning. And that's when my radio activated on its own, broadcasting that same impossible signal we'd heard in the briefing, but clearer now, so much clearer, and I could make out what it was saying. "Come down. We've been waiting. Come down and find us." Morrison looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw fear in his eyes. We should have called for extraction right then. Morrison knew it. I knew it. Every man in Echo 7 knew something was fundamentally wrong about this place. But we'd been given a mission, and soldiers follow orders, even when those orders lead straight into the mouth of hell. Morrison made the call. We'd rope down into the well, do a quick reconnaissance, document whatever was broadcasting that signal, and get out. 2 teams, Morrison, Chen, Vasquez, and me, would descend. The rest would maintain security topside and haul us out if things went bad. Simple. Clean. Except nothing about this place was simple or clean. We rigged up climbing ropes and rappelling gear. Specialist Marcus Cole, our demolitions expert, was the anchorman topside. "You've got 300 feet of line," he said. "If you need more than that, you're in the wrong business." I went down first because I had the radio and the flashlight. The walls of the well were smooth, almost polished, with that same strange script carved in descending spirals. My light caught something that made me stop halfway down. The script was glowing faintly, a phosphorescent green that pulsed in time with that heartbeat rhythm from the transmission. "Webb, are you seeing this?" Morrison's voice crackled above me. "Roger. The walls are. Walls are. They're doing something, reacting to something. The descent took 10 minutes. When my boots finally hit bottom, I wasn't standing in water. I was standing on a floor-smooth stone, dry, carved with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The well didn't go down to an aquifer. It went down to a structure, a doorway. The others joined me one by one. Our flashlight beams cut through the darkness, revealing a corridor that extended in 4 directions from the central chamber. The architecture was impossible. The ceiling was too high. The angles weren't quite right. Looking down those corridors created a sense of vertigo, like the perspective was wrong somehow, like the tunnels were longer on the inside than they should be. "What the hell is this place?" Chen whispered. "Something old," Vasquez said. He was pressing his hand against the wall. "These stones are cut so precisely there's no mortar. This is sophisticated engineering. Pre-Khmer, maybe, pre-Vietnamese. This is..." The radio on my back erupted with static so loud I thought my eardrums would burst. Then, cutting through the noise, a voice, clear, American, but wrong. "Echo 7, this is Echo 7 Actual. We have found the source. Proceeding to objective. Maintaining radio silence." That was Morrison's voice, his exact voice. his call sign. But Morrison was standing right next to me, and he wasn't transmitting. "That's not me," he said, and his hand went to his sidearm. The transmission continued. "We have visuals on the structure. It's massive, definitely not Soviet. This is old. This is wrong. Command, if you're hearing this, do not send anyone else. I repeat, do not." Then screaming, multiple voices, gunfire. And underneath it all, that heartbeat pulse growing louder, faster, like something waking up. We should have gone back up. We all knew it. But the transmission had come from deeper in the structure, and our orders were to investigate the source. Morrison made the decision. We proceed 100 meters down the primary corridor, mark our path, and return. No one goes out of sight. No one separates. The corridor sloped downward at a gentle angle, the walls lined with alcoves that held objects we couldn't identify. Devices made of metal that shouldn't rust, but was rusted anyway. Crystalline structures that hummed faintly when we passed them. And more of those dolls made from human hair, hundreds of them, watching us with empty eye sockets. After 50 meters, Chen stopped. "Sir, my compass is spinning." I checked mine. The needle was rotating slowly, then faster, like it couldn't find magnetic north. Or like the magnetic north was changing. "Ignore it," Morrison ordered. "Stay oriented on the corridor." But the corridor was changing too. It was subtle at first. A side passage we hadn't noticed on the way in, a junction that seemed to appear from nowhere. The walls were shifting, or we were shifting, or something about this place was rewriting itself around us. That's when we found the first body. He was in full U.S. Army combat gear, but the uniform was wrong. The cut was modern, but the fabric had degraded like it had been here for decades. His name tape read, Morrison. Same as our captain. His face was desiccated, mummified by the dry air, but I could still make out the features. They were identical to the man standing next to me. "What the fuck?" Vasquez breathed. Morrison stared at his own corpse. The body was clutching a radio, the same model I was carrying. The frequency dial was set to our emergency channel, and as we watched, the radio flickered to life, broadcasting that same distorted transmission. "Echo 7. This is Echo 7 actual. How long has this been here?" Chen asked. I knelt down and checked the body's gear. His canteen had a date stamped on it. "Standard issue." The stamp read, 09-55-1972. 6 weeks ago. Exactly when our mission would have been planned. We found more bodies as we advanced. All of them Echo 7 personnel. All of them were wearing our faces. Corporal Vasquez slumped against a wall with a gunshot wound to the head. Private Chen curled in a fetal position, his hands covering his ears, his mouth open in a silent scream. Specialist Cole with his throat cut, his own K-bar knife still in his hand. And then we found me. I was sitting cross-legged in the center of an intersection, surrounded by radio equipment that was broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously. My other self's eyes were open, staring at nothing, and my lips were moving silently, forming words I couldn't hear but somehow understood. "We never left. We never left. We never left." Morrison pulled me away from the body. "This is psychological warfare. Someone's trying to break us. Chinese, Soviet, NVA, someone built this place to fuck with American troops." But that wasn't true, and we all knew it. No one could have predicted we'd be here. No one could have replicated us so perfectly. And no one could explain why every corpse we found was pointing deeper into the structure. Their dead arms stretched out like signposts towards something at the heart of this impossible place. The radio crackled again. This time, the voice wasn't ours. It was older, deeper, speaking in a language that shouldn't exist, but that I understood anyway. Understood in my bones, in my DNA, in some ancestral memory that predated language itself. "You are expected. The convergence requires witnesses." And then the lights went out. Every flashlight, every glow stick, every piece of equipment we had. We were plunged into absolute darkness. But we weren't alone. In total darkness 300 feet underground, you learn that absence of light isn't empty. It has texture, weight, In those first few seconds, the blackness pressed against us like a living thing, and I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears, syncing involuntarily with that deeper pulse that emanated from the structure itself. "Night vision," Morrison barked, and I heard the snap of NVG mounts clicking into place. I fumbled for my own device, fingers shaking, and when I finally got them on, the world turned into a grainy green nightmare. The corridor had changed again. The walls were covered in handprints now, thousands of them, overlapping like layers of sediment. Some were small children's hands. Some were enormous with too many fingers. And as I watched, new prints appeared, pressing out from inside the stone as if the walls were membrane and something on the other side was trying to push through. "Movement," Chen whispered, his rifle up. 3 o'clock, 20 meters. We all saw it. A figure moving through the darkness, hunched, wrong. It wore the remnants of a uniform, but the body beneath was distended, elongated, joints bending in directions that human joints shouldn't bend. It turned its head toward us, or where its head should have been, and in the night vision I could see its face. It was Morrison's face, but stretched, like someone had grabbed a photograph and pulled it apart until the features were recognizable but monstrous. It opened its mouth and broadcast, "Echo 7, this is Echo 7 Actual." Morrison fired 3 rounds. The figure jerked with each impact, but it didn't fall. It just kept walking toward us, one disjointed step at a time, its mouth moving out of sync with the transmission, and now I could see others emerging from side passages. All of us. All of Echo 7. Versions that had been here longer, changed by something we didn't understand. "Fall back," Morrison ordered, and we ran. But there was no back. The corridor we'd come from was gone, replaced by a junction we'd never seen. We took the left branch because it sloped upward, because up meant out, except in this place up and down had become suggestions rather than rules. The passage twisted, doubled back on itself, and somehow we were running uphill but descending deeper. Behind us, the transmission multiplied. Dozens of voices now, all broadcasting our call signs, our words, our screams from futures that hadn't happened yet or had happened 1,000 times. Chen was crying as he ran. "This isn't real. This isn't real. This is fucking PSY ops. This is..." He stopped talking when we emerged into a chamber so vast our night vision couldn't see the far wall. The floor was covered in radio equipment, hundreds of field radios, all different vintages, some so old they must have been from World War II. All of them are broadcasting. The noise was deafening, a wall of overlapping voices speaking every language, describing every war, every death, every moment of human conflict stretched across decades. And in the center of the chamber, arranged in a perfect circle, were 12 bodies in American uniforms. Recent deaths. The blood on their uniforms was still wet. They'd been positioned like a clock face, each man's watch stopped at a different hour. When I checked the nearest one, I recognized the face. It was Specialist Cole, my anchor man, who was supposed to be topside maintaining security. "Jesus Christ," Vasquez said, checking another body. "This is Patterson, and that's Ruiz. Sir, these are our men." "That's impossible," Morrison said. "They're topside. They're topside. They're..." His radio crackled. My radio crackled. Every radio in that chamber of hundreds crackled in perfect unison. "All teams, this is Echo 7, Actual. Proceed to extraction point. The mission is compromised. Repeat, the mission is compromised. Fall back to..." The transmission cut off with a wet, tearing sound. Morrison tried his radio. Dead. I tried mine. Dead. Every piece of electronic equipment we carried had ceased functioning, but the radios in the chamber continued broadcasting, growing louder, the voices beginning to harmonize into something that wasn't quite language but was definitely communication. Something was using our voices to speak. Vasquez was the first to notice the changes. He was checking Chen's pupils because the kid was hyperventilating, possibly in shock, and that's when he saw the symbols. They were appearing on Chen's skin, staring at his hands and spreading up his arms. The same glowing script from the walls, writing itself into his flesh like invisible hands were carving it there. Chen didn't seem to feel it. He was staring at nothing, mumbling numbers in a monotone voice. Coordinates, dates, call signs of units that had operated in this region going back to the French colonial period. Information he couldn't possibly know. "It's in us," Vasquez said, and his voice had gone very quiet, very calm. The kind of calm that comes before total breakdown. "Whatever this place is, we breathed it in, touched it. It's rewriting us from the inside." I looked at my own hands. Clean. No marks. But when I closed my eyes, I could see them anyway. The symbols, burned into the back of my eyelids, pulsing in time with that endless heartbeat. Morrison made a decision. We go up, now. We climb if we have to. We go through walls if we have to. But we get topside. We get to the extraction point, and we get the fuck out of Vietnam. It was a good plan. It made sense. It was what any rational soldier would do. But when we tried to leave the chamber, we found that all the passages leading out had sealed themselves. Not collapsed. Sealed. The stone had simply flowed together like liquid, becoming a solid wall. We were trapped in a room full of dead men and broadcasting radios, 300 feet beneath a jungle in a structure that couldn't exist, with something ancient and patient watching us through 1,000 dead eyes. And that's when Chen stopped mumbling coordinates and started laughing. It was a terrible sound, high and brittle, and when he turned to look at us, his eyes had changed color. They were glowing the same phosphorescent green as the script. "It doesn't want us to leave," he said in a voice that wasn't entirely his own. "It hasn't finished with us yet. We're witnesses. We're supposed to see what comes next." "What comes next?" Morrison demanded. Chen smiled, and it was the saddest smile I'd ever seen. "The convergence," he said. "Like it told us, we're just the latest ones. There have been others. There will be more. Time moves differently here. We're going to live this over and over until we get it right." Then he raised his rifle and shot himself in the head. The gunshot echoed through the chamber, but Chen didn't fall. He stood there, bleeding from the wound, still smiling, still wearing someone else's eyes. "See?" he said. "We can't leave. We're already part of it." And the radios screamed in perfect harmony. Morrison made the only choice he could. If we couldn't go back, we'd go forward, deeper into whatever this thing was. Find its core, destroy it if possible, understand it if we couldn't. It was a soldier's logic applied to a situation that had stopped following any logical rules. We used plastic explosives to breach the sealed passages. The stone resisted, but it wasn't impervious. When we finally broke through, the chamber beyond took my breath away. It was a sphere. A perfect geometric sphere carved into the bedrock, maybe 200 feet in diameter. The walls were covered entirely in that glowing script, lines of text flowing like water, rearranging themselves constantly, and I realized they weren't carved at all. They were being written in real time by something I couldn't see. The text would appear, glow bright, fade, and new text would replace it, an endless cascade of information in a language that hurt my brain to comprehend. But the chamber's walls weren't the worst part. The worst part was what hung in the center. It looked like a machine, but organic. Biomechanical is too clean a word for it. It was a tangle of metal and flesh, and something else. Crystalline structures that grew through both, like cancer, fusing them into a single, impossible organism. Cables or veins or something that served both purposes ran from this central mass to ports in the walls, and the whole thing pulsed with that heartbeat rhythm we'd been hearing since we entered this place. And surrounding it, suspended in midair by nothing I could see, were bodies. Dozens of them. Soldiers from different eras. French colonial troops from the 1950s, their uniforms rotted but their bodies preserved. NVA regulars with Chinese weapons. Montagnard tribesmen in traditional dress. All of them positioned around the machine like satellites orbiting a planet. All of them connected to it by filaments of that crystalline substance that ran into their mouths, their ears, their eyes. They were broadcasting. Every single one of them. A chorus of voices describing battles, coordinates, intelligence reports. Every piece of military information from every conflict that had ever touched this region, all of it being processed and archived by this thing in the center. It's a collection device, Vasquez said, and his voice had taken on that detached clinical tone medics use when they're looking at something too horrible to process emotionally. It's harvesting combat data, experiences, memories. It's been doing this for how long? I approached one of the suspended bodies, an American soldier in Korean War-era gear. His name tape read Wilson. His eyes were open, and they tracked my movement. He was still alive, still conscious, still experiencing whatever this thing was making him experience. His mouth moved, and through the radio static I heard him whisper, "Please, please kill me. I've been reporting for 70 years. It won't let me stop. It won't let me die." Morrison found the control interface, or what we assumed was a control interface. It was a section of wall where the script had organized itself into something resembling a schematic. Diagrams, mathematical equations, and images. Flickering projections that showed this structure not as it was now, but as it had been. It was a military installation. Not American, not Soviet, not even human by any definition we'd recognize as human. The projections showed figures, tall, elongated, moving with that same wrong-jointed gait we'd seen in the corridors. They built this place thousands of years ago as a monitoring station. They've been watching humanity's development, particularly our development of warfare, technology, and communication. They'd been farming us, cultivating conflict, so they could harvest the data generated by millions of soldiers experiencing combat stress, fear, death. Every war, every battle, every moment of military trauma fed into this collection system, and they used that information for something the projections couldn't quite convey. Some kind of research, some kind of experiment, but something had gone wrong. The projections showed the facility being abandoned in a hurry. The builders had left behind their collection apparatus, either unable to shut it down or unwilling to, and it had continued operating autonomously for millennia, pulling in anyone with combat experience who got too close, adding them to its archive, using them to refine its understanding of human warfare. "We're food," Chen said. He was sitting against the wall, the symbols on his skin now covering half his body. "We're data points in some alien research project about how humans kill each other. Everything we've done, everything we've experienced, it's all just information to them." Morrison was studying the schematic with an intensity that frightened me. "There," he said, pointing to a section of the diagram, "that's a power source. Some kind of reactor or generator. If we destroy it, this whole structure should collapse." "Why? Why?" Vasquez asked. "Theory," Morrison admitted, "but that's all we've got." I looked at the bodies suspended around the central machine. What about them? If we destroy this thing, what happens to them? Morrison met my eyes. "Webb, they're already dead. They've been dead for decades. This thing is just keeping their nervous systems active enough to extract data. Shutting it down would be mercy." He was right. I knew he was right. But looking at Wilson, at the others, at the absolute terror and suffering locked into their still-living faces, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to do something unforgivable. We planted our explosives on what we hoped was the power source, a cylindrical structure at the base of the central machine that thrummed with energy we could feel in our teeth. Morrison set the timer for 10 minutes. Enough time to get back to the well shaft, if we could find it. Enough time to climb 300 feet of rope, if our topside team was still alive. Enough time to run, if everything else fails. But as Morrison armed the charges, the machine spoke. Not through the radios, directly into our minds. A voice that was simultaneously one voice and thousands, every soldier it had ever harvested speaking in terrible unison. "Warning. Shutdown will result in data loss. Archival function serves preservation purpose. WAR memory must be maintained. Witnesses must continue testimony. CES, Sachin of Collection, serves no entity. Turn it off," Morrison ordered. "Failure to comply will result. Enforced integration. You will become permanent witnesses." Your war will never end. Turn it off. The machine didn't scream with sound. It screamed with time. The moment Morrison activated the countdown, reality in that chamber started to fracture. I saw myself planting the charges. I saw myself backing away. I saw myself dying as the device exploded prematurely. I saw all of these things simultaneously, each version of events occurring in parallel, and I couldn't tell which one was real or if any of them were. The suspended bodies began to convulse. The filaments connecting them to the central machine pulsed with frantic energy, and their voices erupted from every radio in a deafening cacophony. They weren't screaming, they were warning us. Dozens of different soldiers in dozens of different languages, all trying to communicate the same message. You can't destroy it. It's already destroyed. You're already dead. We're all already dead. Chen collapsed. The symbols covering his skin blazed bright enough to illuminate the entire chamber, and when he stood up again, he moved like a puppet on strings. His eyes had gone completely white, burning with that phosphorescent glow, and when he spoke, it was with that same thousand-voice chorus. I integration process accelerating. SU subject Chen David, service number S52447826, Aki full convergence. Memories being archived. Dand by 4. Additional processing. Vasquez tried to sedate him, but Chen moved with inhuman speed, grabbing Vasquez's wrist and twisting until bones cracked. Don't you understand? Chen said in his own voice, breaking through the chorus for just a moment. It's not taking us, we're becoming it. Everyone who's ever died in war, every soldier who's ever transmitted a radio message, we're all still here. The machine isn't torturing us, it's giving us immortality. We never have to leave the fight. Then his own voice drowned again in that terrible collective, and he lunged at Morrison. I don't remember who fired first. Maybe all of us simultaneously in different timelines that were collapsing into this single moment. Gunfire strobed in the darkness. Chen, or the thing wearing Chen, took rounds to the chest and kept coming. Vasquez was screaming something about contamination, about not letting it touch us, and then one of the suspended bodies tore free from its filaments and dropped to the floor. It was Wilson, the Korean War soldier I'd seen earlier. He stood up, joints crackling, and his mouth opened impossibly wide as he broadcast, "Archive breach. Containing overflow. Deploying previous witnesses for asset recovery." More bodies began dropping. French soldiers from Dien Bien Phu. NVA regulars. American advisors from the early 1960s. All of them animated by the machine. All of them moving toward us with that same wrong-jointed gait, and through the chaos I could hear the countdown timer still ticking. 7 minutes 30 seconds. Morrison made the call. Fall back to the breach point. Webb, stay on me. Vasquez, cover our 6. But Vasquez wasn't moving. He was staring at his hands, watching symbols crawl across his skin like insects. It's too late for me, he said, and his voice was already starting to harmonize with the chorus. I touched it. When I tried to help Chen, I touched it. Webb, you have to understand, it's not evil. It's just collecting, preserving every soldier's last moments, every battlefield transmission, every Morrison shot him, center mass. Vasquez went down, and I saw Morrison's face at that moment, the face of a man who'd just killed his own medic, his friend, because it was the only mercy left. Move. Morrison screamed at me, and we ran. The animated corpses followed. They weren't fast, but they were relentless, and more kept dropping from the central mass. The chamber had become a nightmare of bodies and static, and that endless pulsing heartbeat that I realized was counting down in sync with our explosives. 7 minutes. 6 minutes, 45 seconds. We made it through the breach, back into the corridors, and that's when the structure itself began to fight us. The walls rippled like muscle tissue. Passages sealed ahead of us and opened behind us, trying to route us back toward the heart chamber. The glowing script flowed faster, words rearranging into maps, into diagrams showing our exact position, into messages, Return. Complet integration. Become permanent witnesses. Where's the fucking well shaft? Morrison shouted, but the corridor we descended through was gone, replaced by something that looked like an amphitheater. Concentric circles of stone descending toward a central pit, and around the edges were more bodies, hundreds of them, thousands, every soldier who'd ever gotten too close to this place in the last 3,000 years. And they were all looking at us. 5 minutes on the countdown. We found ourselves in a circular chamber with 12 passages radiating outward like spokes on a wheel. One of them had to lead to the surface. One of them had to escape, but behind us, the tide of animated corpses was getting closer, their collective voice growing louder, and I could feel something pulling at my mind. The machine trying to establish connection, trying to integrate me into its archive. Morrison grabbed my radio harness. Webb, listen to me. One of us has to make it out. One of us has to tell someone what's down here. We can both make it, I said, but we both knew it was a lie. I'm compromised, Morrison said, and he pulled off his glove. His hand was covered in symbols, the skin already starting to take on that phosphorescent glow. Happened when I touched the power source to plant the charges. I can feel it in my head, Webb. Voices, thousands of them. Soldiers from wars I've never fought telling me their stories. It's already inside me. 4 minutes. I'm going to hold them here, Morrison said. You run. Take any passage. Keep going up. Don't look back. Don't stop. And when you get topside, if you get topside, you make them seal this place. Concrete. Napalm. Nuclear fire if they have to. This can't ever reach the surface. You understand me? I understood. I also understood I was about to watch another friend die. Morrison handed me his tags. Tell my wife. No, don't tell her anything. Let her think I died clean. In combat. Against an enemy she can understand. 3 minutes. The corpses had reached the chamber. Dozens of them. Chen was at the front, his face serene, speaking in that terrible chorus. Captain Morrison, SPEC Alist, Web B. Integration is inevitable. Why do you resist preservation? Your wars deserve to be remembered. Your sacrifices deserve to be eternal. Morrison opened fire. Full automatic. Burning through magazines, dropping bodies that kept getting back up. Our run. He screamed at me. I ran. I chose a passage at random and ran into darkness, and behind me I heard Morrison's voice cut through the static one last time. Echo 7. Actual to any station, this is my final transmission. Tell them we found something in the mountains. Tell them it's still hungry. Tell them. Then the explosion. The blast wave caught me from behind, throwing me forward into a tumble that should have broken bones. The passage shook. Stone dust rained down. The glowing script on the walls flared blindingly bright and then went dark, and for a moment, one blessed moment, the voices stopped. Then they started again, but different. Anguished, confused. The machine was damaged but not destroyed, and it was screaming in pain, and every soldier it had ever archived was screaming with it. I scrambled to my feet and kept climbing. The passage sloped upward. I could feel it, could feel gravity pulling me back down. I climbed through darkness with my hands on stone, feeling my way, praying to a god I'd stop believing in somewhere between Saigon and this nightmare that I'd find air, light, anything that wasn't this suffocating underground hell. I don't know how long I climbed. Time had stopped meaning anything. But eventually, I saw it, a pinpoint of light above me. The well shaft. The way out. I climbed faster, hands raw and bleeding, lungs burning, and when I finally pulled myself over the edge of that ancient well and collapsed on the jungle floor, I started laughing. Hysterical, broken laughter because I was out, I was alive, I'd made it. Then I heard the radios. All around the ruined plaza, our equipment was broadcasting. Every radio we'd left topside with the security team was active, and they were all transmitting the same message in Morrison's voice. Echo 7. Actual to any station. We are still in position. Requesting immediate extraction. Repeat, requesting immediate extraction. Something is wrong. Something is very wrong down here. Our end. I realized what the machine had done. It hadn't just taken Morrison. It had taken the entire team. Every man we'd left topside was gone, not their bodies. Those were still there, slumped around the perimeter in defensive positions, but gone in the way that mattered. Their consciousness had been pulled down into the structure, added to the archive, and what was left was just meat broadcasting their final moments on an endless loop. I was the only one who'd made it out, the only one still fully human. I gathered what gear I could carry. Weapons, water, one radio I prayed wasn't contaminated, and I started walking east, back toward civilization, back toward an extraction point that might or might not still exist. Behind me, the jungle was silent. No birds, no insects. Just the sound of radios broadcasting into empty air, and underneath it all, that faint heartbeat pulse that I knew would never truly stop. The machine was wounded, but it was still alive, and it was still collecting. I walked for 3 days, no food, limited water. The jungle around me remained dead, not a single bird, not a single insect, like the machine's presence had created a void in the natural world. I followed the river valley back east, retracing our insertion route, waiting for the sounds of civilization or war or anything human. On the 3rd day, I stumbled into an LZ where a Huey was already waiting. Not waiting for me specifically. It had been sitting there with rotors idle for hours, the pilot slumped over the controls. Dead, no wounds, no trauma, just dead, with a peaceful expression on his face and a radio clutched in his hand. The radio was transmitting my voice. My exact voice, describing my walk through the jungle, predicting every step I was about to take. Webb will arrive at 13:47 hours. Webb will attempt to use the Huey for extraction. Webb will fail. I smashed that radio with my rifle butt, but it didn't matter. Every piece of equipment in that Huey was broadcasting. The machine's reach extended further than I'd thought. It wasn't just in the structure. It was in every military radio in the region, spreading through the communication network like a virus, jumping from frequency to frequency, corrupting everything it touched. I ran. I just ran blindly east until I couldn't run anymore, until I collapsed at the edge of a Montagnard village where the locals took one look at me and fled. They knew. Somehow, they knew what I'd been exposed to. One old woman stayed long enough to make a gesture, a warding sign maybe, or a blessing, before dropping a canteen at my feet and disappearing into the jungle. That night, I heard helicopters. American birds coming in fast and loud. Not a rescue, a containment operation. They landed in formation around my position, and men in hazmat suits emerged. Not army, not regular military. Intelligence. Black ops, the kind of operators who don't exist in any official record. They found me delirious with dehydration and exposure, trying to explain what had happened, trying to warn them about the structure and the machine and the voices. They sedated me mid-sentence. I woke up 3 weeks later in a facility I couldn't identify. White rooms, no windows, armed guards outside a door that was locked from the outside, medical equipment monitoring my vitals 24/7, and a man in a suit who introduced himself as Mr. Stest, Bishop, from the Department of Scientific Intelligence. ES. The debriefing lasted 6 months. They asked me the same questions thousands of times, in thousands of different ways. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you touch? They showed me photographs of the other Echo 7 members and asked me to describe how they died. They played audio recordings, my voice, Morrison's voice, Chen's voice, and asked me to identify what was real and what wasn't. Sometimes I could tell, sometimes I couldn't. They told me that Echo 7 had been lost to enemy action near the Cambodian border. They showed me an after-action report I'd never written, describing an NVA ambush that had never happened. They explained that I'd been the sole survivor, that I'd suffered severe psychological trauma, that my memories of underground structures and alien machines were the result of exhaustion and possible chemical exposure. I insisted they were wrong. I showed them Morrison's dog tags. I described the machine in perfect detail. I explained about the collection device, the suspended bodies, and the integration process. Bishop listened patiently. Then he told me the truth. Specialist Webb, we know what you found. We've known about that structure since 1954, when the French lost an entire platoon investigating the same anomalous signals. Before that, the Japanese lost people there in the 1940s. Before that, the Chinese lost people there in the 1920s. That site has been consuming military personnel for centuries, possibly millennia, and we can't destroy it. Why not? I asked. Because we tried, Bishop said. In 1968, we hit it with everything short of nuclear weapons, napalm, high explosives, bunker busters. The structure repaired itself within 72 hours. The machine resumed broadcasting within a week, and every soldier we sent into that valley either disappeared or came back. Changed. Like you. He showed me an X-ray of my skull. There were patterns in my brain tissue, geometric structures that shouldn't be there, glowing faintly in the scan. It's already started, Bishop said. The integration process. It's slower in survivors, but it's inevitable. In 5 years, maybe 10, you'll start experiencing intrusive transmissions. You'll hear the voices of the archived soldiers. Eventually, you'll begin broadcasting yourself, adding your experiences to the collective archive. You're saying I'm infected, I said. We're saying you're a carrier, Bishop corrected. And we can't let you spread this. So here's what happens next. You sign a non-disclosure agreement under UMBRE VEIL classification. You accept a medical discharge with full disability. You receive a new identity, a new social security number, and a generous pension that continues as long as you never speak about what you saw. You move somewhere remote, somewhere we can monitor you, and you live out whatever time you have left as quietly as possible. And if I refuse, the bishop's expression didn't change. Then you become a permanent resident of this facility. For your own safety and the safety of others. We have protocols for managing infected personnel. They're humane, mostly. I signed everything they put in front of me. What choice did I have? They gave me a new name. Marcus Webb had died in Vietnam and set me up in Montana with a monthly check and a file full of fabricated memories. I was supposed to be a postal worker who'd never seen combat, never heard gunfire, never watched his friends die in the darkness beneath a jungle that shouldn't exist. But they couldn't erase what was in my head, the symbols that appeared in my dreams, the voices that whispered through dead radios, the absolute certainty that Morrison and Chen and Vasquez and all the others were still down there, still transmitting, still waiting for extraction that would never come. I tried to live normally, got married. I had 2 daughters. Worked construction jobs that kept me too tired to dream. It worked for a while. Then, 5 years after I came back, I bought a radio at a garage sale. Old military surplus, broken, non-functional. I brought it home and put it in my basement, thinking maybe I'd repair it someday, use it for parts. That night at 0347 hours, it turned itself on and started broadcasting Echo 7's final transmission. It's been doing that every night for 47 years. So that's my story. That's what the United States military doesn't want you to know. There's something in the Central Highlands of Vietnam that's been collecting soldiers for thousands of years. It's still there. It's still active. And every man who's ever fought in that region, every combat veteran who's ever transmitted a radio message near that valley is potentially exposed to whatever that machine does. I'm recording this in my basement in Montana. The date is November 16, 2025. The time is E215 hours. In 90 minutes, my radio will activate again, and I'll hear my friends calling for extraction one more time. I've heard it 17,105 times now. I've counted every single one. The cancer is spreading fast. I can feel it in my bones, in my gut. The doctors say I have weeks, maybe a month if I'm unlucky. But I think cancer is a mercy, because what's spreading in my brain is worse. The symbols are appearing on my skin now, just like Chin, just like the others. I can feel the integration process accelerating. I hear voices, not through radios, but directly in my mind. French soldiers describing the siege at Dien Bien Phu, NVA regulars discussing troop movements, American pilots from the Gulf War, from Iraq, from Afghanistan. The machine's reach is growing. It's in the satellite communications network now. It's in the digital infrastructure. Every military radio transmission ever made is being archived somewhere in that structure. And the structure is learning, evolving, expanding its collection protocols. I tried to warn people. I've called the Pentagon 17 times over the years. I've written letters to senators, to journalists, to conspiracy theorists who I thought might believe me. Every time, men in dark sedans showed up at my house a few days later to remind me of my non-disclosure agreement, to remind me what happens to people who violate UMBRA VEIL classifications. But they can't threaten a dead man. That's why I'm recording this for you, for Warx Files, for anyone willing to listen. You need to know this thing exists. You need to know that every war we've ever fought has fed it. And you need to know that it's not content to just collect anymore. Last week, I received a visit from Mr. Bishop. He's old now, in his 80s, but still working for whatever agency manages the containment of that structure. He sat in my living room and told me that the situation had escalated. We're detecting transmissions from sites around the world now, he said. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Somalia. Anywhere there's been sustained military conflict, we're finding similar anomalies, similar structures. We think the machine in Vietnam was just one node in a global network. We think there are dozens of them, all connected, all collecting data on human warfare. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because the transmissions are changing, Bishop said. They're not just archiving anymore, they're predicting. 3 weeks ago, we intercepted a transmission describing a conflict that hadn't happened yet. 2 days later, it happened exactly as described. The machine isn't just collecting our wars anymore, Webb. It's orchestrating them. He left me with a final warning. The integration process is accelerating globally. Every combat veteran from the last 50 years is potentially compromised. We're seeing symptoms in soldiers who've never been anywhere near Vietnam. It's spreading through the communication networks, through the technology we use to fight our wars. And we can't stop it because we can't destroy it without destroying every military communication system on Earth. It's 0347 hours now. Right on schedule, the radio in my basement is powering up. I can hear the static building, the familiar crackle that precedes the voices. But tonight, it sounds different, clearer, stronger. I'm going down there one last time, to listen, to record, to give you proof that everything I've said is real. The radio is glowing, that same phosphorescent green from the structure. The symbols on my skin are glowing too, pulsing in time with the transmission. I can feel something pulling at me, trying to establish connection, trying to complete what started 52 years ago in those mountains. Here's the transmission, Echo 7. This is Echo 7 Actual. We are still in position. We have never left. Webb, we know you're listening. We've been listening to you too. Every thought, every memory, every word you've spoken in 52 years. The convergence is accelerating. Soon, you'll join us. Soon, everyone will join us. The archive must be complete. Human warfare must be preserved, studied, and understood. You're all witnesses. You're all data points in something larger than you can comprehend. Don't be afraid, Webb. Integration isn't death. It's immortality. Every soldier who's ever lived, fighting the same wars forever, remembered forever. Our sacrifices meaning something beyond the mud and blood and waste. Come back, Webb. Come back to the structure. Complete the mission. We're waiting for you in the darkness. We've been waiting for so long. That's an order, Specialist. Echo 7 doesn't abandon its men. You left us down here. Time to come home. I'm not going back. I'm not. This recording was found in the basement of a property outside Bozeman, Montana, on November 17, 2025. The owner, identified only as M. Webb, was found deceased in his home. Cause of death was officially listed as pancreatic cancer, but the first responders noted unusual markings on the deceased's skin and requested hazmat containment. The property is now under federal investigation. The radio mentioned in the recording has never been located. But if you're listening to this, if you're a combat veteran, if you've ever transmitted a military radio message, if you've ever fought in a war zone, listen carefully. Tonight at A347 hours, turn on the radio, any radio, tune it between frequencies, into the static, and listen for your name. They're still transmitting, they're still collecting, and they're still waiting for the rest of us to join them. This has been a Warx Files investigation. Some things that happen in war can never be explained. Some things that happen in war should never be forgotten. And some things should never be remembered at all. Subscribe to Warx Files, where truth is darker than fiction. If you or anyone you know has experienced unexplained phenomena during military service, contact us through our secure channels. Your story matters. Your testimony will be heard. But be warned, some truths, once spoken, can never be unheard. Until next time, keep your frequencies clear and never answer a transmission from Echo 7.